Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming everyone. Sawadee Kap, welcome. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning at Tung. Today is our group learning program where I share the teachings of the Buddha to help people understand the path to enlightenment. And on Sundays, I go chapter by chapter through this book, helping students to understand the foundational teachings that it takes to be able to get to the mental state of enlightenment where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And then on Wednesdays, I do meditation where I guide you guys in meditation. Then I just open up to any and all questions that you guys would like to ask. This Sunday, I'm going to be starting the group learning program from the very beginning. It's the very first class where it's a 7-month program where I slowly teach students over a 7-month period. And you can attend here at the temple, but you can also attend online. So I'd like to welcome the people who are joining us online as well. You can join through Facebook, YouTube, Zoom. It's also recorded. So if you can't attend the live classes, either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. on Sundays and Wednesdays, you can actually attend through the recordings. So welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone that's online. What I'm going to do today is guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation session. And then afterwards, I'll just open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the teachings of the Buddha and the path to enlightenment. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is I do some chanting to ease us into meditation. If you'd like to see these chants or if you'd like to chant along, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You can get those. You'll see the Pali chants because we chant in the Pali language, which is the historical language that the teachings of the Buddha are captured in. And these chants, when you read them, you'll see the English translations as well. There's a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha in these chants. And because of that, I don't think that the Buddha actually created these chants himself, that his students probably created them either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't go around telling other people, here, chant these things to me. So there's a lot of admiration and respect there in the chanting. It's important to know that these chants, it's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. He didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship. He didn't teach prayer or anything like that. Instead, you're training your mind and you're awakening the mind through wisdom. He used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory so that every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word, because everything he taught was oral. Nowadays, we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this, but they didn't have that during that lifetime. They didn't even have the ability to write things down because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world yet. So when the Buddha would teach, everything was oral, and then they would recite his teachings every 2 weeks, word for word, and that's how chanting came about. So it's important to know that when you're chanting, it's not a prayer or worship, it's not mystical or magical, it's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship or any of that kind of stuff. So after we do our chanting, I will come in with some guidance to be able to guide you in meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Those of us here and those of you online will just all be meditating together at the same time. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting as well. As terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught in order to meditate in. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. He taught these different positions because your body can't be in the same position all the time. It's just not possible. So you're going to need these different positions at different times. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, so I'll give you some guidance on that. And then just know that there's these other positions that I teach in the various courses and retreats that I share. I'll teach you how to do these other positions. In the seated position, people are either usually sitting on the floor, in a chair, maybe on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. You can really sit however you're comfortable. If you're on the floor, you might have a cushion under your rear, which kind of softens your seats a little bit. And you would like to just lightly cross your legs. If you have your legs too tight, this will impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. So you're not interested in that. So you might just lightly cross your legs. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which gets their hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So if you'd like to do that, feel free to do that. It's not about everybody being in the same position. It's about finding what's comfortable for you. So if you're comfortable with your legs off the mat, feel free to use something like that. And you can just sit however you're comfortable truly. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. excuse me, if this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. You need to find what's comfortable for you. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable with your hands and the arms. And the same thing for those of you guys in chairs, or maybe if you're at home on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like that. Usually people will put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can really sit however you're comfortable, because you can see I'm in a chair with my legs crossed, so you could sit however you like. And the same thing with the hands and the arms. You would like to just put them wherever you're comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. With your sternum up and your shoulders back, you'll be able to meditate more actively because your mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation. It also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose with your sternum up and your shoulders back. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting. As I mentioned, you're welcome to join along, and then afterwards I'll come back in with some guidance. Excuse me. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตวะมานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online. For those of you guys that it's your first time here at the temple, I'll just share a few things with you to help you understand the space a bit and feel a bit more comfortable. In the back of the room, the very last door on the right, there's a bathroom. You're welcome to use that at any time. Feel free to help yourself. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you go out to the parking lot, there's signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathrooms, and you can see where those are, and you can use those as well. We have some water and juice and even some snacks show up here from time to time that you're welcome to help yourself to. These are all provided by our students, and you're welcome to help yourself to any of that stuff over there. So as I was mentioning, today is all about just doing some meditation together and then opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. If there's questions that you have about the teachings of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment, anything that you're seeing in the temples here in Thailand or anywhere else in the world, anything that you're reading or seeing in the news or anything that you're coming across, even your personal challenges, anything that you're experiencing personally that's very challenging for you, you can ask any and all questions that you like. If you're here at the temple and you would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. If you could just get a microphone and press the gray button on it, you'll see the lights will come on, and you can just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online, so it's always best if you could use the microphone. And then if you'd like to take the microphone back to your seat wherever you're at, you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share the microphone. For those of you guys that are in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. I'll be able to see that that, and then I'll be able to answer your questions. And then if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. While you guys are maybe thinking about a few questions that you would like to maybe ask, I will share with you guys just a little bit of a taste of the teachings of the Buddha so that you can have at least a little bit of an understanding of them. And if you would like to, as I mentioned, ask questions at any point, there's the microphones here. And then those of you guys online, you know how to ask questions as well. The teachings of the Buddha are here in order to help you gain wisdom, to understand how to awaken to the natural laws of existence. The Buddha didn't teach a bunch of beliefs, and then if you believe these things, something good will happen for you when you die. He also didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this. There's nothing mystical or magical about his teachings. Even though you might see some of those things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, even now when you go around to different temples and stuff, you might see rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and things like this. You might hear people talk about beliefs, but the Buddha never taught any of those things. That's the unfortunate thing, is that the Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago, and now 2,500 years later, people are really misunderstanding his teachings in a lot of ways. What his teachings are here for is to help you awaken to the wisdom of the natural laws of existence. Just like a natural law that is like the natural law of gravity that you needed to awaken to and you needed to cultivate wisdom about, there's other natural laws that you need to cultivate wisdom about and awaken to those as well. When we don't understand a natural law, it will affect us whether we're aware of it or not. Like the natural law of gravity, it was affecting us whether we are aware of it or not. And as we were growing up, because of our lack of wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we struggled and we had difficulties. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke open our knees, we broke our toys. We had all kinds of difficulties. And we cried and we cried and we cried because we didn't understand the world that we lived in. But slowly but surely, we awoke to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And when we did, we started making wiser decisions that led to wholesome outcomes. We learned not to be so giddy and so excited when we're walking down the street. We learned to look at the surface of the sidewalk. We learned to tie our shoes pretty tight. We learned how to climb ladders and ride bicycles and get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. Not because anybody told us to do anything particular, but it's just that we could see the truth for ourselves that this natural law was affecting us, and we understood how to navigate the world more peacefully by awakening to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And now we don't struggle with that natural law anymore because we make wise decisions that produce wholesome outcomes. But when we lacked wisdom, we made unwise decisions and it led to unwholesome outcomes. And this is inadvertently what an unenlightened mind will do when it lacks wisdom of any particular natural laws. It will tend to make unwise decisions and it's going to produce unwholesome outcomes. And some of those unwholesome outcomes that you experience is the anger and the sadness and frustration, the irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are part of what the unenlightened mind is experiencing because it hasn't awoken to the wisdom of the natural laws. And now the mind is struggling in this world that it doesn't understand. So the Buddha didn't teach you the way the world should be, with a bunch of rules and a bunch of commandments. And then if everybody follows these rules, the world will become a peaceful place. He didn't teach you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. In this way, you can learn it, you can investigate it and examine it, you can reflect on it to independently verify whether it's true or if it's false. Then you can practice it. And as you're practicing his teachings through training your mind, you can awaken to more and more wisdom to be able to get to the point where you can navigate the world peacefully. And you can make wise decisions and experience wholesome outcomes. One of the wholesome outcomes that you'll experience as part of getting to enlightenment is your mind will no longer experience it. If you're interested in getting rid of the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings, you can accomplish that through training the mind through the teachings of the Buddha. And what a teacher is here for is we're like a tour guide. We're here to point out to you the things that you need to learn and understand in order to make your way to enlightenment. But each individual student is doing their own work, that it's your own independent journey to enlightenment. I can't give you enlightenment. Nobody else can give you enlightenment. It's you that needs to do the work. You're on your own independent journey, but you're going to need teachers and guides to be able to help you. There's only one type of individual that can actually get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides, and that would be an actual Buddha. A Buddha will get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They will then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. And these are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. And this individual, Gautama Buddha, meets those criteria, and that's how we know that he's an actual Buddha. So if you're interested in asking any questions about the teachings of the Buddha, you can let me know, because you're on your own journey to be able to get to enlightenment. It's your own mind that's causing the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. Excuse me. With a lack of wisdom in the mind will think that the anger and the sadness and the annoyance and the irritation and the frustration is being caused by other people. You might blame other people. You might think it's your mom or dad or your brothers or your sisters or your life partner or your children or your boss or your coworkers or people like this that is causing the discontent feelings in your mind. But in reality, it's one's own mind that is causing these feelings. That's why you can actually eliminate them. If it was everybody else who's causing you to be angry in the world, you'll never be able to fix it. You'll never be able to solve it. You would never be able to attain enlightenment because it's everyone else who is causing you to be angry. But when you come to understand the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you learn it, reflect on it, and practice it, you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's something called craving, desire, attachment. The mind is longing, it's yearning, it's wanting things to be a certain way. And when the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or sad or frustrated or agitated. And you don't need to believe anything that I share. Don't ever believe anything I share. You can independently verify what I'm sharing with you is the truth, that your mind is causing your own feelings. Because if you look at a recent situation where you're angry, where you were sad or frustrated or agitated, you can look at that situation and realize that there was something your mind wanted. And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what it wanted, you were angry or sad or frustrated. At the time, you might have been trying to blame other people, but this is just because of a lack of wisdom. But now with more wisdom, you can look at these same situations and realize that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And you don't need to feel guilty or shameful about this, because every being who's ever been born was unenlightened. But the goal of this life is to be able to gradually awaken to this wisdom and get to the point where you can fully cultivate the mind and you can escape all of these discontent feelings. You can eliminate them from the mind through training of the mind. But if you don't understand what's causing these feelings and you kept blaming other people for what's causing them, you'd never be able to fix them. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see true reality, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So that way you can actually address the root cause, which is within your own mind. And then by training your own mind, you can see the peace and the joy starting to come into the mind more and more. So I'm going to see what questions you guys have. Again, you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. Here at the temple, if you could use the microphones, and then those of you online, you could put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. So it looks like, Roxanne, you have some questions?
Yeah, given the definition of a Buddha, then if there were to be another Buddha in our next lifetime or whenever, that would be a whole new set of teachings, right? Because that would be someone who independently discovered whatever they discovered on their own without referring to Gautama Buddha's teachings at all. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
Okay.
The natural laws of existence are the same natural laws that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha as exist now today. So the natural laws are the same. So what the Buddha taught in terms of the natural laws, it's going to be the same things that an individual needs to awaken to today in order to experience enlightenment. An individual who would be a Buddha today, they would have new analogies, new things like that. Like they wouldn't be talking about maybe farming so much, because the Buddha talked a lot about farming analogies because people were very familiar with that. Today, they would maybe use analogies about cell phones and cars and airplanes and things like this that people understand today. But the description of the natural laws is going to be exactly the same. While the natural laws are the same from the lifetime of the Buddha as they are today, and that's why his teachings are timeless, the books and the memories and the things that people have used to document the teachings, those things are impermanent and those things have been constantly changing. So if you look at a lot of the translations that exist in the world, they're really kind of not very thoroughly done. They're not really describing the teachings in the best way possible. So any Buddha who existed today would need to be able to update the teachings, but they're not updating the actual teachings. They're updating our understanding of those teachings. So the Buddha's teachings at his lifetime helped people to fully awake to the wisdom of what it took to get to enlightenment. But then the books and people's memories and all of that have changed because they haven't understood and they're not as in touch with what he taught during his lifetime as they were when he actually lived. So now 2,500 years later, someone getting to enlightenment by themselves, they would be understanding the same exact things that the Buddha understood, but they would need to update our understanding of those teachings because people have lost the meaning of what the Buddha actually meant when he was teaching and what he was talking about that would help people get to enlightenment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions you guys have here? It looks like our internet's back on. You guys should be able to hear me online. I see Miriam, you said you couldn't hear me, but now you should be able to hear me. We lost our internet. That's why it kind of muted me. No other questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything here. Oh, yes, sir. You have a question here?
Can I ask? So before I got interested in Buddhism, I was reading about Stoicism. It's like a Greek or Roman philosophy, and I feel like it's kind of similar to Buddhism in some ways. Like they talk about, for example, having a strong mind, like a strong and stable mind. And I think in Buddhism, I feel it's kind of similar. But I wonder if it's kind of like okay to kind of like combine the two. And like for me, I find a lot of value in Stoicism, but I find a lot of value in Buddhism. And I feel like they can kind of like work together for me. Like, is that a problem, or like would that be like something to discourage or something?
Yeah, what you're going to notice is that if you start mixing and matching things together, it's going to dilute the effectiveness of any one particular thing. It dilutes the teachings. So right now, what sometimes people will do is they will see a little bit of the strand of what the Buddha taught in something else, and maybe they know this other thing fairly well, and they will say, oh, the teachings of the Buddha are very similar to this. And this is one of the ways that the mind will kind of choose to not learn this other thing because it thinks that, it's very similar to this thing. Where I've studied a lot of these different things, and even though you can see some commonalities between them, there's nothing like the teachings of the Buddha that exist anywhere in the world. He's teaching the complete elimination of discontent feelings, and there's nothing else in the world that is teaching that, including modern psychology even. That oftentimes what people are teaching you is to cope with certain feelings or to have beliefs and things like this. So while you'll see some common strands, even between teachings like the Buddha and Jesus, or the Buddha and Hinduism, or even Muslim teachings, you can see a couple of strands that are somewhat similar. As soon as you start mixing these things together, it's putting yourself in the role of almost being like a Buddha, where you're trying to figure out how to get to enlightenment on your own. So while you can appreciate these other things, and while you can be able to see the commonality between them, what you're going to notice is that if you approach the teachings of the Buddha fully on its own merits, that's what's going to lead to enlightenment. Because by understanding the complete package of what the Buddha taught, you'll be able to penetrate into it more deeply, get really deep into that wisdom, and you'll be able to experience the real results. Where once you start changing the teachings of a Buddha, or you start mixing and blending other things into it, it's going to dilute the power and effectiveness of what the Buddha actually taught, and then you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment that way. So if you approach the Buddha's teachings on its own merits fully and wholeheartedly, you'll be able to see that they lead to enlightenment, and then you'll see these commonalities to these other teachings, but mixing them in together will actually take you away from being able to fully awaken, because it's going to modify what it is that the Buddha taught and be able to help you to get to enlightenment. So there can be an appreciation for these other teachings, while at the same time, if somebody's truly interested in getting to enlightenment in the way that the Buddha taught, they would need to approach his teachings wholeheartedly and be able to see with 100% confidence that they're leading to an improved condition of mind and an improved condition of your life. But what you choose to do is up to you. Yeah. Okay, we have some questions here online. It looks like we have some more coming in here as well. So let me answer some of these while you guys get the mics. Chris is asking, he says, Teacher David, I have a friend that does not understand why you teach people and tell them what is true if they are not supposed to believe you. For them, it seems like a contradiction. Can you kindly explain why it's not a contradiction, or why both makes sense in a way that's better than I'd be able to explain? Thank you. So in order to get to enlightenment, it's true, there's no belief. And I teach people, don't believe anything that I say. But in order to get to enlightenment, you need somebody to point the way. You need someone to hold the light and to show you the path. It's like if you were standing in the woods in the darkness, you wouldn't be able to see the path. So I'm not teaching you to believe me that there's a log right there in front of you. I'm showing you with the light that, hey, there's a log right there. And I'm saying, don't believe me, go see the log for yourself so you don't trip and stumble over it. So an individual is going to need to learn from a teacher with guidance of what the teachings are. But then through that learning and examination and investigation of the teachings, you start reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or false. And then you practice them in order to integrate them into your life. A student isn't going to be able to figure out the path to enlightenment by themselves. So that's why they need a teacher in order to teach them and show them the way and hold the light. And then the student's role is to be able to then reflect on those teachings and practice them. And then they'll be able to see the truth with more and more wisdom. They'll be able to see that the teachings awaken their mind and they're experiencing more and more peace and more joy in their day-to-day life. Chris has some more here. He says, Teacher David, would becoming a soldier or a policeman prevent someone from walking the path to enlightenment? Is it possible to be an enlightened police, an enlightened soldier, or at least a practitioner that has reached the first stage of enlightenment in either occupation? The answer is yes, you could still do those things. There's nothing that you couldn't do in terms of these kinds of things, because not every soldier is out there actively killing. Not every police officer is out there actively killing. These individuals are sometimes doing other things. There's soldiers who are medics, for example. There's soldiers who do other things, right? The goal of being a soldier or a police officer isn't necessarily to kill, because an enlightened being isn't going to actively go out and aggressively kill people. But if you were doing your job, let's just say you were an office worker, you were an administrative assistant just typing away on the computer. If somebody walked into your office and they were holding a gun or a knife, and let's just say that this administrative assistant is an enlightened being, and this person was trying to attack this administrative assistant, that administrative assistant might need to actually kill that person in order to show loving kindness and compassion to this being who you are. So it's not that an enlightened being would never, ever, ever kill under no circumstances. It's that an enlightened being isn't going to go out actively killing and having the intention to kill and initiate a killing. But if you are sitting in your home and somebody just shows up and starts trying to do harm to you, even as an enlightened being, you're going to try to stop this harm with doing the least amount of harm as possible. And if it came to a situation where there needed to be a life taken, an enlightened being would need to be able to do that, because that's showing loving kindness to this being. So a police officer or a soldier might need to do those kinds of things in certain situations. So it's not the occupation itself that's going to preclude someone from being able to experience enlightenment. It's having craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, and that's what's going to hinder the mind from being able to experience enlightenment. Chris has one more question here. He says, Teacher David, it's in today's time, is it possible to not be a vegan in the first stage of enlightenment? Is it possible to not be a vegan in the fourth stage of enlightenment? Is it possible to not be a vegetarian in the first stage of enlightenment? Is it possible to not be a vegetarian in the fourth stage of enlightenment? So whether someone decides to eat plant-based food or not, or whether they're a vegan or vegetarian, this is always a personal choice. Each individual person needs to make these choices for themselves. What you'll tend to see is as somebody's loving kindness and compassion starts to arise more and more, and they start to understand the natural law of karma more and more, they might choose to move to a plant-based food supply out of loving kindness and compassion for other beings, and also out of loving kindness and compassion for this being who you are. Because by eating plants, you'll actually notice that there's more health in the body and there's less impact to the world around us. But because we're the first generation of beings who are massively moving to plant-based food again, because at one time human beings were plant-based eaters. We started moving to meat out of necessity, but now we're starting to move back to plants. Because of that, there's going to be some people in this generation, and maybe even the next 2 or 3 generations, that are going to have a very challenging time to move to a plant-based food supply. There might still need to be 5% or 10% of their food intake that needs to be some type of animal product, because their body just can't adjust. Once we get to multiple generations of eating plants, we'll notice that people will be able to more easily move to plant-based food, because there's like this student I have who's in her 50s, and even when she was in the womb with her mom was eating plant-based food. So she's never had a piece of meat in her life, and she doesn't take any supplements or anything like this. Her body has fully adapted to a plant-based food supply. She doesn't even need vitamins or supplements or anything like that. So there needs to be multiple generations of being able to easily be able to switch over to plant-based food. So there could be somebody who's actually enlightened and still choosing to eat 5, maybe 10% of meat out of loving kindness and compassion for this being who they are, because their body just can't move over to a plant-based food supply. But this person would have already investigated that very thoroughly. They probably would have tried to move to a plant-based food supply. They probably would have worked with doctors or nutritionists or people like this to see if there was some way that they could do it. But ultimately, at the end of all of that, they could have come to the conclusion that it's just not possible. And out of loving kindness and compassion for this being, they might still eat a little bit of meat, but not because of their central desire and their longing and yearning for it, but out of necessity for their own health. And in this situation, you could actually have an enlightened being who's still eating some degree of meat. When we get multiple generations away from where we are today, you won't see that. You'll see more and more people that'll be plant-based eaters, and they'll be enlightened. Okay, so that looks like all of Chris's questions up till now. So I saw some more mics go out. Is there other questions here that you guys have? Yes, ma'am.
So I appreciate the saying where he said a lot of these resentments, angriness came from our own mind rather than someone else. But if we solve everything within ourselves, does that kind of interface or influence our ability to see the problems in the world and change that? And to give an example, let's say if we feel resentment in a relationship, either it's with your parents or your partner, if you kind of see the problem and communicate that, that will help both of you probably become better in this relationship. But then if you solve everything by yourself, then the other person stays the same. It kind of, you lost the opportunity to make things better with the two of you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just a question around the ability to influence and solve problems if you solve everything by yourself.
Sure. It's important to understand that all the problems that an individual is experiencing is within their own mind. It doesn't mean that the outside world doesn't have issues. There's other beings who have issues in the world, but you can't solve their problems. Each individual person has to be able to work on their own mind and their own problems. Because if you're feeling resentment, it's not because of what the other person is doing. It's what's going on in your own mind. And oftentimes the mind has a hard time to see this until you study and understand the truth for yourself. Where resentment is coming from is that the mind has certain expectations. It has certain wants. It wants this other person to be a certain way. And when they're that way, you'll be happy. You'll be excited. But when this person doesn't do what you want them to do, then you'll be resentful towards them because they're not functioning in the way you want them to function. It doesn't mean that they're not being unwise, because they could be doing something unwise, but the resentment is coming from the mind's expectation, the wanting, the longing, the yearning, wanting this other being to be a certain way. So you can't solve your problems through fixing other people. The problem of resentment within one's own mind is coming from the expectations of craving for every single being to be a certain way. And oftentimes, because of the mind's ego, the mind wants other people to function the same way as you. And the mind's wanting this permanence and wanting everybody to function the same way. But yet you live in an impermanent world. So as long as the mind keeps craving permanence and wanting other people to be a certain way, when they're that way, you'll be happy. And when they're not that way, you'll be angry or sad or sorrowful or resentful or any other discontent feeling. And then you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards them, which is damaging your relationships. So what you can get to is you can get to a point where you realize that the real problem is within your own mind. And now you work on solving that. And part of solving that is to have the wisdom of knowing what's wise and unwise in the world and not causing harm to others. And then when you have people who are close to you that are maybe struggling and they don't have wisdom of this natural law, if they're interested in awakening and gaining more wisdom, you're in the best position to be able to help that person because you've done the work for yourself. If you haven't figured out how to get rid of your own resentment, you wouldn't be able to help somebody else through any challenges that they're having. But let's just say you have eliminated your resentment and you're completely peaceful and joyful. Your mind is enlightened. And now you see your family members or other people around you are bitter and harsh and hostile and angry. If you would like to try to help them, you can, but the only way that that person's actually going to receive any benefit and help is if they choose that they would like to learn and practice and develop and train their mind. We couldn't force somebody to eliminate their anger and frustration. They have to decide on their own that this is something that they would like to learn. So by you working on your own mind, becoming more and more and more peaceful, the people around you will be able to see that, and they'll probably ask you like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you used to be kind of grumpy and irritable and nasty, and now you're like so peaceful. What happened? And you're like, oh, it's the teachings of the Buddha that helped me to do that. And like, really? How can I learn that? And you're in the best position to be able to guide them towards some resources to help them. Oftentimes we think the way to solve our problems is to go out into the world and change other people. But this will never solve the problems that you're experiencing within your own mind, is because the problems within one's own mind isn't coming from the outside world. So trying to fix other people isn't going to actually solve the problem. You can't change others. Other people need to decide for themselves that they're interested in change and they're interested in improvement. And then if they have the opportunity to do that, then they can do it. But the only thing you can decide for yourself is to change your own mind. And that's going to be challenging enough for you, is to change your own mind, let alone trying to change other people. So you can let go of any kind of burden that someone might have convinced you that you need to go out into the world and change others. You can eliminate that burden from your shoulders and realize that each individual person has to decide for themselves that they would like to create something better in their life. And when they choose that, then that's where they'll experience improvement. And if you choose that you would like to have something better in your life, then you'll experience improvement. And then if somebody else would like to ask you how you did it, you'll be able to help them to understand that.
May I actually ask a follow-up?
Sure, you can ask as many questions as you like.
I know it's going to be a long journey to change your mind and get to that stage of enlightenment, but maybe what are some small little things we can do as a start to kind of solve these issues from ourselves?
So yeah, to get to complete enlightenment, it's going to be a long journey. It's not 1 month, it's not 1 week, it's not even 1 year, but you gradually, steadily, and consistently grow and develop, becoming a better and better human being. So where I suggest that people start is to take like a foundational course, or start with the first book, reading the very first volume, and start with that and going through like the program that I teach, where every Sunday I just teach a little bit, or like once a month I teach the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course. This is going to give you like a big dose of information that's going to help you to really firmly get on the path to enlightenment, because you're going to need to build up a practice of generosity where you're giving and sharing with other people. This is going to help you eliminate selfishness. You're going to need to improve your moral conduct in order to understand the wise way to interact with other people in the world. And you're going to need to develop a meditation practice. And these things are all taught as part of foundational programs, and other things are taught as well. So you're going to need to develop the foundational understanding. And you can do that like in a 5-day period that I teach once a month. I teach a 5-day course that gives you the foundational teachings. Or you could take this group learning program, which is like each Sunday. We're getting ready to restart it this Sunday. And in a matter of a few weeks, you're going to have like a foundation to understand the path to enlightenment. And then you can gradually, slowly but surely trickle these teachings into the mind, building up your generosity, building up your moral conduct, building up your meditation. And this is what's going to slowly move the mind in the direction of enlightenment. And with a teacher being able to provide you resources that I know with 100% certainty these teachings work, then you can have confidence in those, but then you don't believe them. You can learn them, reflect on them, and practice them. And slowly but surely, you'll see the improvement to the condition of your mind, and you'll know you're headed in the right direction, because there's going to be these little subtle changes in your life. Where I've had some students, they've studied for 2 days, and they've come in on the 3rd day and they say, David, I got an email this morning that would have normally shaken me up. But I read that email and I completely understood it, and I wasn't upset and I wasn't frustrated. And that was a real change for them. They could see that in as short as 2 days that this email in the past would have normally shaken them up. So you can see these little subtle changes like this, and then you put all those together 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road. These qualities of enlightenment, it's not like it's nothing, and then like 6 years from now, boom, you're enlightened. That's not the way it is. It's that between now and whenever you get to enlightenment, there's going to be these slow incremental improvements that you're going to be able to see along the way, even as short as 2 days, like this one example that I'm giving you. And then after you put enough of the training together, a month after month after month, you're just going to see gradual and slow improvement more and more and more as you go forward. And that way you can see the indication that your mind and your life is gradually improving, because you'll see your relationships gradually improving, and you'll see your mind gradually improving. So you'll know you're headed in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Did I see another microphone over here?
Do you believe that we should be living in the current moment, or neglect the current moment and hoping that tomorrow will be a better one? Working hard today makes a better tomorrow. Do you believe this philosophy?
I don't believe in anything at all. There's no beliefs that I have at all. Everything that I share is what I know to be the truth, and I've independently verified each thing that I share. Instead of thinking about having a better tomorrow, which is having the mind in the future, I would suggest you think about today. Right now, this present moment, because what you do in the present moment is going to lead to the next moment. So if someone's always focused on having a better tomorrow, that means today is not good. So I wouldn't believe anything at all, including that, because that puts your mind in the wrong location. You would like your mind to be in the present moment, where you're focused on right now, here and now, and then now make this moment really wonderful and learn as much as you can learn, for example, in this environment. And now that's going to lead to the next moment that's going to be really great for you. And then say when we're done here, let's just say you go to a restaurant and you're eating food. Well, now make that moment a really great moment. Make sure you eat some really good food, you have some great conversation with your friends, and make that a really wonderful moment. And now that leads to the next one. So rather than focused on a better tomorrow, make right now better. And now that's what's going to lead to the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Question over here.
Wondering if you can share more information about Vipassana, the kind of meditation, because I heard it's pretty hardcore from my friend who went there. And I think last time we briefly discussed about how to deal with discomfort and pain during meditation, and you recommend do not have to endure that. That's why the 4 ways of meditation from the Buddha. So if my very shallow understanding of Vipassana is true, which is kind of very hardcore, so how does that contradict with the Buddha's teaching as well? But like, I don't know much about that at all, so if you can shed some light, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. So you're asking me about Vipassana, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Okay. So I'm going to flip forward here. I have some visual aids here because I sometimes use these as you guys are asking questions. Let me get to what I was looking for. I'm not sure why that's not there. Let me go to another place. I thought it was in there. I would like you to be able to see the words of the Buddha so that you have more confidence. It's not just me explaining to you, but it's also the words of the Buddha to be able to see what he was teaching here. Actually, I'm going to go all the way here. Let's go to right here. Okay. So what people are describing as Vipassana, you'll never see the word Vipassana in the original teachings of the Buddha, even though this is being taught in a lot of different places in the world and this word Vipassana is being used. You won't see that word in his original teachings. I've never been to a Vipassana retreat. I've never studied with any of those people. Only thing that I know about Vipassana is what students have told me that they're learning. And from what I understand is the first 3 days, they're learning what the Buddha referred to as breathing mindfulness meditation. And that's what they're learning the first 3 days in a Vipassana retreat. Then they start learning the body scanning, which you won't see in the teachings of the Buddha. He never teaches about body scanning. And then towards the end, they learn about loving kindness meditation. Okay. But what I think that they're trying to do when they're doing this body scanning is I think they're trying to develop what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is something that you actually need in order to be able to get to enlightenment, is develop your mindfulness in these 4 foundations. But before we talk about that, let me show you the words of the Buddha where he introduces the 4 meditations that he taught. So this is the words of the Buddha. Before he was getting to this point, he was describing 5 things that his students needed to develop in order to get to enlightenment. And it was mainly centering around developing wholesome friends. And then he says, okay, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things that he just talked about, the monk should develop further another 4 things. And now these are the 4 meditations that he taught. He taught to develop the perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, because this is one of the challenges on the path to enlightenment, is if you have really intense sexual cravings, it's going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. Then he taught loving kindness in order to abandon ill will or anger, hatred, all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance. So loving kindness meditation is going to rewire the mind and eliminate your anger and your sadness and frustration. And not only the meditation, but going out into the world and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life. Then there's this mindfulness of breathing, or breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts. That's what we did this morning. Because in day-to-day life, your mind is holding on and craving permanence and wanting things to be a certain way. This is why, like when you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys break up and you're no longer together, as long as your mind's holding on to that person, you'll be lonely, you'll be bored, you'll be frustrated, you'll feel discontent. You'll be agitated or annoyed. But when your mind lets go, that's where your peace and your joy will come in. So the mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to cultivate mindfulness or awareness of mind, concentration, and the ability to let go. Because you can see when your mind let go of your boyfriend or girlfriend, that's when you gained your peace and your joy. So that meditation that we just did, the goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to train your mind to easily let go when you have certain unwholesome thoughts. And this factors into the Eightfold Path. But nonetheless, I won't go into too much detail on that one unless you ask more questions. Then there's this meditation to realize non-self, which is something you talked to me about when we were in Wat Umang. There's a meditation to help you to realize non-self, but there's other techniques that you need as well. So these are the only 4 meditations that the Buddha actually taught. And here, what I've done is I've listed them out, and I've included what the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating as part of that meditation, because that's what meditation is there for. It's to help you build certain wholesome qualities in the mind, and it's to help you eliminate certain unwholesome qualities in the mind. And here you can see that nowhere does the Buddha talk about body scanning, but this is something that people are choosing to do, and it's a modification of the teachings of the Buddha, in my opinion, right? You don't see anywhere that the Buddha describes Vipassana in his teachings, but you'll see people that talk about this and that actually do it quite a bit. And it must be beneficial for them, or else they wouldn't be doing it. I never needed Vipassana in order to accomplish anything that I'm experiencing in terms of my mental state. So that's why I know that someone else doesn't need that. But if somebody chooses to do it, it's up to them. What I suspect that they're trying to do is they're trying to build what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. These are the 4 things that your mind needs to be aware of, which is called bodily sensations. Here, I'll back it up so you can see the visual aid on this too, because visual aids always help people to learn. Here we go. So here is the words of the Buddha on mindfulness and the right mindfulness. And he talks about these 4 foundations of mindfulness. He talks about body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. And he's talking about building this awareness of these 4 things. What he's essentially talking about is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to follow. And I've summarized this on the next slide. I see you guys taking pictures, so I'll wait for you to take this picture. And then here's the summary of it. What the Buddha is talking about in right mindfulness is he's talking about awareness of mind. That in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have awareness of what's going on in your mind. In the unenlightened state, we tend to not have awareness of the mind. We just go through life, plowing through life, not really attending to our mind, not really thinking about our mind. We're all taught to wash our body, brush our teeth, shampoo our hair. We're all taught those kinds of things to take care of the physical body. But typically, we're not taught to take care of our mind. Unless you live in a place like Thailand, they're being taught how to take care of their mind. So if we're only cleaning the body, we're not addressing the full being. We're leaving this big piece out, which is the mind. So here in Thailand, you're learning how to not only clean the body, of course, but you're learning how to clean up the mind too. And in order to clean up the mind, you need awareness of the mind. You need to be aware. What are the wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind? And what are the unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind? Because you would like to support and encourage the wholesome qualities, and you would like to eliminate the unwholesome qualities. And the way that you do that is through having awareness of mind. That's generally what we talk about with mindfulness. Now, in day-to-day life, people use this word mindfulness in a way that the Buddha didn't use it. They might say, can you mindfully carry this to that table? Where what they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this to the table, right? What mindfulness means, though, is it means awareness of mind. More specifically, it means having awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. The bodily sensations that we're talking about here isn't just the average itch or the hip pain or knee pain. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness. Before you get angry, for example, before you get frustrated, before you get shy, before you get bored or lonely or any of these other discontent feelings, even happiness or excitement, there's going to be some bodily sensation. With anger, it might be like tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. You may or may not even be aware of these things. Before you get discontent, there's going to be some bodily sensation. This is an early warning system. It's alerting you, hey, you're about to get a conditioned feeling. And you can take action at the bodily sensations. You can cut it off and let it go. And this is going to protect your mind and preserve your mind. Whereas if you allow that to become a feeling, now your mind's angry and you've got to deal with that. You've got to get it out. So you would like to be able to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations. You're not suppressing your feelings. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it actually becomes a feeling. Because your mind is alerting you with those bodily sensations. It's saying, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you can say, nope, not going to let you do that. I'm not going to do that. And you can train your mind to no longer do that. Because if you allow the mind to get the conditioned feeling, it's going to stay wired like that. What a conditioned feeling is based on some condition, you're now going to get happy. Based on the fact that it's sunny, you're now going to get happy. Based on the fact that your bank account balance is here, you're now going to get happy. Well, if you get happy when your bank account balance is here, that means when it goes here, you're going to get sad. You're going to get frustrated, right? Because your bank account balance is not permanent. So that means as soon as you allow your mind to get happy based on some condition, when that condition changes, you're going to end up in the sadness or frustration. So as long as you keep allowing your mind to have conditional feelings, you're never going to be able to get to permanent happiness or permanent joy. So what I think that they're doing in Vipassana is I think they're trying to develop this awareness of the bodily sensations by doing the body scanning. But I never have seen that anywhere in the original teachings of the Buddha that they're talking about body scanning. You can see that he talks about developing awareness of the bodily sensations, but he doesn't talk about the actual meditation that is being done in a lot of these retreats. So whether people choose to do that or not is up to them. I can assure you that the only things that you're going to need are those 4 meditations. In fact, you only really need 2 of them, which is breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. The other 2 are only needed in some situations, specialized situations. So like elimination of sexual cravings. You may or may not ever need that. It depends on how strong your sexual cravings are. The meditation to realize non-self. You're going to need to realize non-self in order to get to enlightenment, but you may or may not need that meditation. Some people can realize non-self without that meditation. So it's only breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation that you actually need. And the beauty about this is that by you really focusing on those 2 meditations, you can get really deep into it and you can really understand how to do them really well. Whereas if you tried to learn 30, 40, 50 different meditations, you wouldn't be able to learn those and master those because you'd be spread too thin. So the Buddha only ever taught 4 meditations, and there's only really 2 that are actually needed 100% by every single practitioner. So you can really get deep in those particular meditations and then use these other 2 only if you need them in a specialized situation. So I apologize, I don't have any more information on Vipassana other than that. And I would guide you to learn breathing mindfulness meditation first. And then after you got like 4 to 6 weeks of that under your belt, then bring in the loving kindness meditation. And that's what'll help you. So this group learning program that I'm going to be teaching starting on Sunday. On Sunday, I'm going to be going chapter by chapter in the book. But then on Wednesdays, I'm actually going to be teaching a 4-part series. The first 4 Wednesdays, I'm going to be teaching breathing mindfulness meditation. And then the following 4 Wednesdays, I'm going to be teaching a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. And I think you're planning on taking the course next week, which is the Harmony and Relationships course. And in that course, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation as well. So you're going to be learning breathing mindfulness and loving kindness meditation next week if that's what you choose to take that course. And those are the real 2 that you need. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions you guys have here or online?
Can you maybe say more about the mind and mental objects? Because we
sure.
kind of go through body and feelings and find that really helpful.
Sure. So there's these bodily sensations, and what you would like to do is put a blockade there and cut off and let go. But your mind's not going to be able to do that initially because your mind doesn't have enough training. It doesn't have enough discipline. So you are going to experience some conditioned feelings between now and enlightenment. But you would like to get better and better at noticing those bodily sensations and cutting them off and letting them go. But if you miss it there, then when the mind is experiencing the feeling, you would like to be able to cut it off and let it go there. It's just a lot harder because now it's in the mind. If you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's going to affect the condition of the mind. This is where like you've been grumpy or irritable for like a day or two or like a week or two. That's because you didn't cut it off as a bodily sensation. You didn't cut it off as a feeling. And now it's affecting the condition of your mind more long term. And then what's happening is it's feeding what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container that's in the mind. And in this example, it's ill will. Because we weren't born with ill will. We didn't have ill will when we were born. We didn't go into the nursery hating other babies or being angry at other babies, right? We were like, goo goo gago, I'm here in my little crib. I feel so great or whatever, right? That's what we were doing when we were children. We didn't have ill will in the mind because we didn't have this mental object. But we did have craving. We had this longing, yearning. We wanted things to be a certain way. That's why we cried when we first came out of the womb. Because we were inside our mom's womb having a good old time. We were all by ourselves. We didn't have to do any work. All the food was coming to us. We could just sit back and have a good old time in there. And then all of a sudden, we got pushed out or we got cut out, right, through surgery. We wanted to be inside that womb, right? We didn't like this change. We had all this light. We had all this, different sounds and stuff like this that we were dealing with. We didn't like that impermanence. And that's why we cried. We were discontent when we first came out. Right? So inside the womb, we didn't have this mental object, but we had craving, desire, attachment. And we got to the point where when we were growing up, we said, Mommy, Daddy, I want chocolate. I want ice cream. Can you give me chocolate and ice cream? And our parents were like, sure, here you go. Here's some chocolate and ice cream. And we're like, you're the best mommy and daddy ever. Oh, right? We had our chocolate and ice cream. Well, then at some point as we aged, we said, Mommy, Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no, you can't have any. We were angry. We were frustrated because we didn't get what we wanted. As long as we got our chocolate and ice cream, we were happy. But when we didn't get what we wanted, we got angry. We got frustrated because we didn't get what we wanted. And we blamed that on our parents. We thought they were the worst parents ever because they wouldn't give us the chocolate and ice cream. So this formed a mental object that we had the bodily sensations and we were too young. We didn't have the wisdom to cut it off and let it go. It formed a feeling in the mind. We had a conditioned feeling based on the condition of not getting our chocolate and ice cream. We got angry. So now the mind was angered. Now for a few minutes or a few hours, we were grumpy, we were irritable, we were agitated, and then it formed this mental object of ill will. And as we aged, we had more and more experiences like this because of our expectations and our wants kept growing and growing and growing, and the things that we wanted other people to do. And then we started becoming angrier and angrier and angrier in certain situations. This is why some people, when they're old, they're very grumpy. They're very irritable. But you don't have to be old and grumpy. You can be old and cheerful. It just doesn't matter about your mind and how you've trained your mind. So if you have all these expectations and all these wants in your mind, you will be grumpy and irritable. But if you get rid of all that cravings, desires, attachments, if you get rid of these mental objects and you purify your mind, that's what it is to be on the path to enlightenment, is to purify the mind of these mental objects, because there's multiple mental objects, not just ill will, there's multiple. And the path to enlightenment is to purify the mind of these mental objects. And when you do so, you'll be completely cheerful. You'll be completely joyful because there won't be anything that's plaguing your mind or polluting your mind. But in the unenlightened state, you'll have these mental objects that are polluting the mind, and it'll be very difficult for you in certain situations, and you'll struggle and have difficulties. So this is the life cycle that your mind's going through as you're experiencing discontentedness. And the more you cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, the better. Eventually, you'll get to the point where all the cravings, desires, attachments are out of the mind, and there won't be arising of any anger. It just won't arise because there's no causes and conditions that are producing it. But between now and enlightenment, you're going to experience what I'm describing here, and you got to be able to cut it off and let it go and not allow the mind to experience those discontent feelings. It's kind of like preventing the water from ever coming into the boat, because once the water comes into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. So this is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take, and the Buddha is alerting you to this so that now you can take action to fix it. So I'll give you this in a real world example. Say you're sitting down in your living room and you're watching the news, and now something comes on the news, and you are watching that, and you notice these bodily sensations of frustration. Your mind hasn't become frustrated yet. The feeling isn't there yet. You just notice the bodily sensations starting to arise. Well, rather than just let the mind sit there and dwell in that and actually become frustrated, the better thing to do is cut it off and let it go. Turn off the TV, or get up and go for a walk, or go get a glass of water from the kitchen. No need to sit there and dwell in that frustration. Don't allow the mind to get frustrated. So those bodily sensations are the early warning system alerting you of what's about to happen. And if you know what's about to happen, and you know that it's unwise to allow your mind to experience that conditioned feeling, when you're noticing the bodily sensations, you cut it off and let it go. And not just with the painful feelings, but you need to be able to do this with the pleasant ones too. And remember, these are conditioned pleasant feelings. So let's just say your mom calls you and says, "Hey, I heard you got a new apartment, a new condo. I'm going to come visit you on Friday. This is going to be so great. We'll cook food. We'll have a great time." If you're noticing the excitement come up, you got to cut that off and let it go, because the mind's getting excited based on the condition that mom is coming to visit. Because if you get a call on Friday and mom's like, "Hey, so sorry, I can't come." Well, if you got excited on Tuesday when she said she was coming, on Friday when she says she can't come, you'll be agitated and frustrated, and you'll probably blame mom. But in reality, what it was is the mind got excited when mom said she was coming on Tuesday, and now mom just experienced impermanence. That's all it is. Something changed in her life. So if you cling to this and you get so excited when mom's coming, then when mom's not coming, you'll be sad and frustrated. So when you notice the conditioned pleasant feelings coming, you got to cut it off and let it go. You got to let go of the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent joy and the permanent happiness. As long as you're holding on to the temporary happiness, you'll never get to the permanent happiness, because the temporary happiness is based on some condition. If it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. So that means when it rains, you'll be sad. When your bank account is here, you'll be happy. So that means when your bank account's here, you'll be sad. When your mom and dad do this, you'll be happy. So when they do this over here, you'll be sad. So if you never allow your mind to get a conditioned pleasant feeling, that means whether your bank account balance is here or it's here, you can still be happy, because you're not forming your feelings based on your bank account. Or if your mom and dad do this, or your mom and dad do this, you can still maintain your happiness. If it's sunny or if it's raining, you can still maintain your happiness. But if you keep allowing your mind to get happy based on some condition, that condition is impermanent. And as soon as it changes, your mind's going to end up in the painful feeling. It's only a matter of time. So you'd like to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a problem as the painful ones, because you'll never get rid of the painful ones if you don't get rid of the conditioned pleasant ones. So that way, by getting rid of all these conditional feelings, by using something like this, and there's actually a whole lot of other teachings that you need. There's this whole entire path. Right mindfulness is just number 7. You actually need the entire path. And when you get the entire path understood and practiced, this is what's going to lead to your enlightenment. This is the path to enlightenment. And when you study it through the words of the Buddha, you can gradually awaken to this wisdom, and then you'll know how to train your mind to get to the peace and joy. And this mindfulness is a big part of that, but it's not the only part. There's other pieces too. Anything else you guys would like to talk about? Anything else? Okay. Oh, you have a question? Yep.
For me, when we talk about enlightenment, it kind of seems like unrealistic for me or unattainable. Like, I kind of feel like when we talk about it, it's like someone saying to me, "Oh, you can become a professional basketball player." It just seems like out of my reach, but something that I feel like I can get from Buddhism is I feel like I can have like better mental health, maybe get angry less, feel less stressed, stuff like that. I feel like is realistic for me. So is it kind of like okay to view Buddhism in this way? Like, I don't really think I'm gonna attain enlightenment, but I feel like my life can benefit from Buddhism. Like, is that like an okay way to go about it?
You can view Buddhism however you like. Nobody's ever going to tell you how you should or shouldn't view Buddhism because it's your own life, it's your own mind. You can decide for yourself how you like to view it. I would suggest the only reason why you think that you can't get to enlightenment right now is because you don't know how. You don't have the wisdom. You haven't cultivated the wisdom of how to do it. Like probably when you were maybe 1 year old and we asked you if you could have talked, you probably would have said, I have no thoughts that I'll ever be able to walk. There's just no way that I could ever walk. But then as you learned and practiced, you're like, hey, actually, I can walk. And I bet if we talked to you when you were in 3rd or 4th grade, you probably would have said, there's no way that I could ever do calculus or geometry or trigonometry. But by the time you got to high school, you were able to do it, right? So when you lack wisdom of something, you're going to look at it like, oh my goodness, there's no way I can do that, right? If you're standing at the bottom of a mountain, you'll look at the top of the mountain, you're like, there's no way I can ever get to the top of that mountain. But if you just focus on one step at a time, next thing you know, you're halfway up the mountain, right? And then next thing you know, you're actually at the top of the mountain. So if you don't have the wisdom of how to do something, it will look really far out of your reach. But if you gradually, slowly, but surely cultivate wisdom, you'll be able to see that it's very obtainable. What you're experiencing right now is something that the Buddha taught. I've got all these visual aids here, so I'll just use them and show you guys what they are. You're describing something called doubt. There's a certain fetter in the mind. These are the 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and he figured out how to eliminate them. The second one is called doubt, where the mind doubts the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. And that's what you're talking about, right? And with this doubt, it will hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. But the way that you eliminate doubt is not through blind belief or faith or anything like this. The way that you eliminate it is through investigation of the teachings, examination of the teachings. When you're investigating and examining the teachings and you reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or false, and you can see that they're true, and then you start practicing them and you see your mind's moving to an improved quality, each day, each month, each year, your mind's just improving, you'll eventually get to the point where you eliminate your doubt. But right now, being new to these teachings, people are going to have doubt. I had doubt when I first came to this path, but what I did is I harnessed it. I rolled up the sleeves. I turned it into an inquisitive mind. I was like, you know what? I do doubt the teachings of the Buddha. Absolutely. I doubt them. But you know what? I would like to figure out whether they're true or they're false. And that's when I investigated them. I sunk my teeth into them. So the fact that you have doubt now, it's normal. But just understand that the way you eliminate that is not through kind of like, well, if I just kind of get a better mental state, that's enough for me. That's kind of like a defeating perspective. Instead, be like, you know what? I don't know whether this enlightenment thing is true or not. I don't know because you haven't experienced it, right? I don't know if it's true or not, but you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to figure out if it's true or not. I'm going to investigate these teachings and I'm going to sink my teeth in. And if it's true, wonderful, I'll get there. And if it's not, I'll figure that out too, right? But I can assure you that if you learn and practice these teachings, it's going to lead to your enlightenment. Whether you get to enlightenment in this life or not, that's up to you, whether you decide to actually learn and practice. But I know with 100% certainty that what I'm sharing does lead to this mental state, or else I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I've given up my career, I've given up my businesses, I've given up all that worldly stuff in order to be able to share these teachings, because I know with 100% certainty they work. And if you investigate them close enough, you will see that they work too. This is one of the unique things about the teachings of the Buddha, is that he never said, just believe me, just believe me, just believe me. He said, no, he said, come investigate my teachings, come examine them, see for yourself. And that's what I'm saying too, right? It's like, come see for yourself. So this doubt is a normal thing, but don't let it defeat you. Turn it into an inquisitive mind, sink your teeth in, investigate, and then you'll actually see that they're true and that they will lead to this improved condition of mind. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. Just looking here online again. Okay. Oh, you have another question? Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Just going back to your example of you seeing a piece of news on TV and you get irritated. I'm just wondering, how do you let go the craving even for pain? Because I think a lot of people, or even myself, we dwell on that body condition and then we get to that feeling is because we're kind of craving for pain even unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And we like to dwell in that feeling of resentment or sadness for whatever reason. And I think that kind of hinders the progress of enlightenment, because sometimes I even doubt, is enlightenment actually valuable? Like, because a life with pain and excitement is just kind of more exciting and life like a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just wondering how you think about that.
Yeah, if you think that having excitement and having pain is fun, you haven't, of course, experienced enlightenment yet, because being in the enlightened mental state is way more fun than that stuff. Because with the excitement is going to come the sorrow and the grief and the pain and displeasure. And when you're experiencing those feelings, they're no fun, right? And depending on how much of those you've had in your life is going to determine how motivated you are. There's some people that I've talked to, they're like, my life is pretty peaceful, like, yeah, I get irritated every once in a while, but it's maybe like once a month. And they're not really that motivated on the path to enlightenment. They're not really interested because their mind is complacent. They're dealing with this little irritation once a month and they're just not interested. Hey, that's where they're at. That's what they're experiencing. Their life might not always be that way, but that's where they're at now. But if you've been one of those kinds of people that have experienced the deep sorrow and the sadness, maybe if someone close to you dies, you might experience that. Or if you've been in a really close relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you guys break up, you might experience that. But nonetheless, the way that you get motivated is you need to be able to get to the point where you're only interested in the peace and the joy, and that this roller coaster is not fun anymore. To be able to get to the point where you eliminate all of that stuff, you need to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is going to teach you how your mind is causing these discontent feelings. And you need to be able to first understand the three universal truths. This is something that I walk students through. So this Monday, I will be teaching this Monday morning at 9 a.m. And I'll also be teaching it not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. I'll be teaching it as well. And I've taught it many times. It's been recorded many times because this is like the first step on the path to enlightenment, is to understand the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, because it's the entire Eightfold Path that's going to guide you to eliminating those cravings, those desires. So if you're clinging to the sadness and the anger, or if you're clinging to the excitement and the thrill and exhilaration, your mind's going to need to learn how to let that go and see it as part of the problem. Because as long as your mind's going up and down like this, your life's just going to be shaken up. So when we talk about enlightenment and we talk about how the mind's peaceful and joyful, peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, sometimes people think that an enlightened being is like numb, right? Or like, oh, that sounds so boring, just being peaceful and joyful all the time. They think like, oh, like it's almost like, that heart monitor where it's like, me. That's not what enlightenment's like at all. Enlightenment is where your mind is always uplifted. It's always bright. It's always joyful. You're always having a good time. You can enjoy everything and anything, right? Where in the unenlightened state, you can only have pleasure when you get what you want. And that's going to be very minimal. Like this has got to be true. 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 Then you'll be happy, right? So if you like really want to go to Thailand and you're so excited to go to Thailand, but then you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed, you're going to sit there for 3 hours being frustrated. And that's not fun. But as an enlightened being, if you're interested in going to Thailand and then you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed for 3 hours, it's like, all right, well, flight's delayed. Let me just see what there is to do here. Let me just hang out and figure out what else could be interesting to do here. Your mind's not shaken up. You're not frustrated or agitated. So if you allow your mind to get to that excitement, when you're not getting what you want, you're going to drop down here, where an enlightened being can just always be joyful no matter what you're doing. So you need to be able to learn the entire Eightfold Path. This is what's going to train your mind to eliminate your craving. That's what you asked me, like, how do you eliminate the craving? It's each one of these steps that's going to help you to eliminate craving, because you can see in the Four Noble Truths that the problem is the craving. The problem is the discontentedness. That's the first Noble Truth. The second Noble Truth is explaining the cause of that problem, which is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. The third Noble Truth is explaining the elimination of the problem is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And then the fourth Noble Truth is explaining the way to accomplish the elimination of craving, desire, attachment is the Eightfold Path. So it's the Eightfold Path working together that is going to essentially eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. Now, there are certain teachings that I could share with you that are specifically targeting craving, desire, attachment. But if you just did those two things, it's not going to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. You still need all these things here. So rather than just go in and tell you those two things, it's better to say, hey, learn this whole thing. And then that's what's going to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. This is the path to enlightenment. And it's not so difficult to learn. You can learn it in a relatively short period of time, get onto the path and see real improvement in your life. Okay, anything else you guys would like to ask? No? Oh, have some more? Okay.
Is this working? Yes. Something that I'm not quite understanding is because you talk about cutting off the feelings, right? And for me, all of my life, I think I did cut off feelings, suppress feelings, and I think I felt like life was really good because I was almost denying suffering. And I'm sort of in this place now that I'm trying to build more awareness of suffering and try and actually sit with feelings and really understand what I need, because I'm trying to identify feelings as a signal for my needs. So where does that sit with everything that you're discussing right now?
Yeah, you don't need these feelings to be able to know what you need in life and what would be wise in life. So what we're teaching is not to suppress your feelings. That's something completely different, and that's going to ultimately blow up on you, right? You know that, right? Because you suppress them and then they just come up some other time. What the Buddha is teaching you here is to cut off and let go and train your mind to not form a conditioned feeling. Sometimes we think feelings are wonderful, like, oh, when I feel excited, it feels so good. Or when I feel sorrow, some people, like we were just talking, enjoy that sorrow, like they enjoy that up and down. So you need to be able to see the difference between a conditioned feeling and an unconditioned mental state. A conditioned feeling means you can only feel this thing when some condition is present. So that means you can only be happy when these particular things are happening. And when those things aren't happening, you'll feel sad or frustrated. So your mind goes up and down. So as long as you allow the mind to do that, you can't be peaceful and joyful permanently. So you don't need to look at your feelings. You don't need to sit with your feelings. You don't need to observe your feelings, because that's just allowing the mind to continue to stay forming these conditioned feelings. You can know everything that you would like to know about feelings through the Four Noble Truths, that the mind is experiencing these feelings based on craving, desire, attachment. And as long as you keep allowing the mind to stay wired like that, it's going to keep forming feelings based on some condition. So if the mind gets what it wants, it'll be happy. If it doesn't get what it wants, it's going to be angry or sad. And because the world is impermanent, you can't permanently get what you want. So you don't have to look at the feelings, experience the feelings, observe the feelings, sit with the feelings in order to eliminate them. In fact, as long as you're doing those things, you wouldn't be able to eliminate them. So we're not suppressing them. We're cutting them off and letting them go. We're removing the causes and conditions that are producing them. We're purifying the mind. And that's what the 10 fetters are right here. These are the causes and conditions in detail. This is like the most detailed level description. These 5 and these 5, this is what's actually causing the mind to experience what it's experiencing. And when you purify the mind of this, you will have eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings, and then you don't have to experience them anymore, because there's actually no benefit in experiencing a conditioned feeling. As long as your mind is sad or angry or frustrated, it's shaken up, and now you're going to make unwise decisions in your relationships, and you're going to damage your relationships. You're going to make unwise decisions about your career and your personal life, and now that's all going to come back to you. All those unwholesome results are going to come back to you. But if you can purify your mind and you get to the point where your mind's peaceful and stable and joyful, now you can just make wise decision after wise decision after wise decision, and you'll only experience wholesome results in your life. But if you keep allowing your mind to be shaken up with conditioned feelings, you won't be able to get to wise decision after wise decision after wise decision. It's going to be unwise decisions, and you're going to keep having to experience this blowback, these unwholesome results. So the way you might think about it is like if you were walking down the beach and you were kicking sand up, the sand's going to keep blowing back in your face, and you don't like this. So you learn when you walk down the beach, don't kick sand up, because you're not interested in it blowing back in your face. So what you learn how to do is walk down the beach in a nice, peaceful, and calm way. And now you can just enjoy the view. You can enjoy the waves coming in. You can enjoy the laughing and the cheerfulness of the beach. You don't have to have this sand keep blowing back in your face. And that's essentially what's happening in day-to-day life. When you're experiencing the anger and the sadness and the frustration, you're just getting the sand blowing back in your face over and over and over again. And the mind doesn't even know how to stop it from happening because of its lack of wisdom. The mind doesn't even know how to stop the anger and the sadness and frustration. But when you get the wisdom of how to stop it, you can stop it. And now you can just walk down the beach and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me just check online one more time. All right. Yeah, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end by thanking all of you guys. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your interest in understanding the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for your questions. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome. As I mentioned, the first book is a great place to start. You can download it for free from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can get it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. Then you can attend all the classes and courses and retreats either here or online. It's up to you. You can even get personal guidance if you'd like to sit down and talk privately. We can sit down and talk privately as well. I'm pleased to help you guys, whether you're here or even as you travel. We can meet on Zoom if you'd like. So if you'd like to attend future events, this Friday we have a game night at 6 p.m. You're welcome to come here. We're going to have a social event. Sometimes students like to bring food and snacks and things like this. We'll have a bunch of board games. We'll be playing some music and stuff like that. It's a really nice social event to sit back and relax and talk and play some games. Then on Saturday, we have the Pali Canon and English study group. On Sundays, we have the group learning program, which is starting from the very beginning. That's a good program to start in. And then on Monday, we have the Harmony and Relationships course. That is Monday through Friday, where you're learning about how to develop harmony in your relationships. And you're welcome to attend any of these things here. And then a lot of these things we're live streaming. We don't live stream game night, but we live stream everything else. Okay? So enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you choose to do, and perhaps I'll see you in a future class. Okay? Be well. Take care. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.